Good evening, everyone. I think we'll go ahead and get started. Give everybody a moment to sit down if you want to. All right. Good evening, everyone. So I want to say thank you to and hello to everybody who's here in the room, but also we have a number of folks online too. So welcome to everybody, both in person and virtually. I'm Cinnamon Carlarn, and I'm the very proud 19th President and Dean of Albany Law School. And it's a real pleasure to welcome you here tonight to the Nancy M. Sills 76 Memorial Lecture. This event honors the legacy, the wonderful legacy, of Nancy Sills, a distinguished alumna and dedicated advocate. Her commitment to legal education and social justice truly transformed our community and really continues to inspire us and give us great reason to be here tonight. We're particularly honored this year to focus on the important theme of disability inclusion in aging law and policy. As our society increasingly navigates complex issues related to longevity, care, and equity, it is absolutely imperative that we view these challenges and approach these challenges through an inclusive lens. The intersection of aging and disability requires thoughtful policy, robust legal frameworks, and most importantly, of course, listening to and centering the voices of those who are affected. Now, tonight, we are very privileged to welcome Kimberly Hill Ridley, Chief Disability Officer of the State of New York. The Office of the Chief Disability Officer of the State of New York advocates on behalf of people with disabilities and helps connect them with state agencies that provide them with vital services. The office advocates on statewide accessibility issues, provides a disability perspective on policy proposals, legislation, and state agency operations. So thank you, Kimberly, for being here with us tonight. We're so proud to welcome you. And we're especially lucky tonight because Kimberly is joined by a group of dedicated leaders and disability advocates from the Office of the Chief Disability Officer of the State of New York. It's incredible that we have you all here today, and we're so grateful to each of you for being here with us today. I don't think I've seen a more impressive panel since I've been here, so this is fantastic. Yeah. And finally, but not quite finally, I want to thank the Sills family for their ongoing support of this lecture series. We actually have both Stephen and Ronnie here tonight representing the family, and we're so grateful that you're here. It makes it all that much special. Nancy Sills was a true champion for elder rights, and this lecture series allows us to further understanding of the legal issues that face the most senior members of our society. It's absolutely vital work, and we couldn't do it without the support of the Sills family, so thank you so much for your continuing support. Now, before I welcome up Pat Wilds, the director of the Government Law Center, I want to take a moment to remember and celebrate Richard Rifkin. Now, as many of you know, Richard was the legal director at the Government Law Center. Richard passed just over a week ago on September 30th, and this is the first opportunity that we have had as a community to gather since his passing. And on this wonderful night, when we remember and celebrate Nancy Sills and her remarkable legacy, it also offers us an opportunity for us to remember and celebrate Richard as the wonderful human that he was and for all of the truly remarkable contributions that he made not only to Albany Law School, but also to the wider community and of course the state through his his long career as a public servant. Now, Richard's contributions are too many to mention here tonight, but he is remembered and he is celebrated for his integrity, his deep knowledge of ethics and public policy, and a truly unwavering commitment to the rule of law and the public good, as well as a desire and a commitment to training the next generation of lawyers in public service. So on behalf of our community, and I know I speak for us all, let me express our sadness at his passing, but also our gratitude and our appreciation for all that he was and all that he did. So tonight we celebrate Richard alongside Nancy with an appreciation for the vision they brought, the contributions they made, and the powerful legacy of commitment to justice and rule of law that they left and that they continue to inspire in all of us. And it's now my pleasure to introduce the director of the Government Law Center, Pat Wild. Now, since joining us in this important leadership role just in January, Pat has been leading us forward in our efforts to broaden and deepen our understanding of the critical issues in government law and public sector space, including this really important conversation tonight. And we're all very grateful for his leadership. So, Pat, over to you.
Good evening. And, as I get going here, I'll echo so many of the thoughts that the Dean shared. So thank you again for all of your support and all of our programming here at the Government Law Center. As the Dean mentioned, my name is Pat Wilds. I'm the director of the Government Law Center here at the law school. Um, like many of you, I'm an alum of the law school, and much like Nancy. And we were just talking earlier, Steve and I, about the fact that next year is her 50th anniversary of having graduated. So while we're really excited for tonight, we're already excited for next year and to get to do a special lecture again then too. Since 2003, am I getting that right? 2003, this lecture has been held to honor Nancy's life, memory, and professional accomplishments. And, you know, Dean Carlon said so many wonderful things about Nancy. I'd echo all of those. We're really excited tonight, both through the Government Law Center and our Institute for Aging and Disability Law, led by Professor Bailey, who's one of our moderators tonight, to host this event, which focuses on these intersections of aging and disability, and efforts to incorporate the experience and needs of people with disabilities into New York's aging law and policy. The government office that our speakers tonight are actually from, the Office of the Chief Disability Office, and maybe they're going to get to this, so sorry if I'm beating into the punch here, was established in February of 2022 when Governor Hochul signed legislation that literally created this office. And I just want to emphasize the importance and the value of that, and the win that was for the disability community that this happened. For those who aren't familiar with some of the history here, advocates had been pushing for the creation of this office for years and years. There had been previously an office for the advocate for persons with disabilities, but that had been eliminated as maybe 20 years ago prior, 2005, 2006. It was a huge accomplishment that this office was created. It's a huge accomplishment that the governor appointed Cahill Ridley to oversee it. And of course, Kim's built a wonderful team who will introduce themselves as we pass through. I have personal relationships with many of them as well. I got to work with them in the governor's office, and you will not find more committed public servants and folks committed to advancing the rights of people with disabilities than Kim and her team. So thank you all for being here. The timing of this program, I think, is actually really fitting. Of course, it's during midterms, so students might disagree, but absent that, we've had some really exciting events at the school this month and the last week or so that I know one of those at least was actually really special to Nancy as well. One of those was Senior Citizen Law Day, which happened just this past Saturday. My understanding is she was a stalwart there, where such great legal services and programming are afforded to senior citizens and their families. So her presence was missed there, but we continue to do all that type of work in her legacy and spirit as well. This month is also, and maybe the team here will speak to this a little bit later, DREAM, I'm getting that right. October is Disability Rights and Employment Awareness Month. This group, to my left and to my right, has some really exciting programming going on later this month in downtown Albany to that effect. And also just on a more personal level, Dean Queenan, Professor Bailey and I are teaching a course this fall called Disability Justice. So this just fits right into the theme here of focusing on this really important area. Just some quick logistics, and then I promise we'll hand it over to our moderators. On a logistical lens, there is a live stream. The program is being recorded on there. There are live automated captions and ASL interpreters on the screen. Our team has passed out note cards and pens, so please use these to write down any questions you might have for our guest speakers. We'll collect those around 6:15. There's also a Q&A function on the Zoom, on the virtual piece, so please feel free to submit questions there. We are monitoring it. And then a reception afterwards. We're hoping that if you've made the time to join us, you'll hang around afterwards. We're going to do a reception in the East Foyer, which if you go downstairs, it's the side that's closest to the parking lot. One final just note here, and Dean Carlon did this really beautifully. We are, of course, really saddened by the loss of our legal director, Richard Rifkin, who passed away last week at the age of 84. Just on that quickly, he loved this type of program, would really just be proud of the speakers tonight, those in attendance. Being a public servant was everything to him, and advancing conversations about law and policy, especially in regards to marginalized, underserved, less spoken about populations was really a bread and butter for him. So I think he'd be really proud and happy that we're doing this program tonight. Of course, I want to acknowledge all the students that are helping out tonight because they could be studying for midterms. So make sure you still do that. Our team, Chell and Tamar and Lisa and Professor Bailey, thank you for being here. And without further ado, I'll hand it over to Chell Miller, our fantastic program director of the Government Law Center, who's going to co-moderate tonight with Professor Bailey. So thanks, everyone.
Great, good evening. Can everybody hear me okay? All right, fabulous. Thank you. My name is Chell Miller. I'm the program director in the Government Law Center. I'll let you introduce yourself too.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here. I'm Rosemary Bailey. I'm part of the Government Law Center too, and we're really looking forward to tonight. Thank you to all of you. I was saying earlier to the Dean, it's very exciting to see that the Chief Disability Office is staffed with a number of people who can speak to a variety of areas that are very important to all of us. So thank you.
Yes. Thank you. So our plan this evening, before we break for reception, first we're going to have each of the panelists introduce themselves and explain how their work, both individually and as an office, fits within the landscape of disability law, policy, discourse, disability rights. We're going to turn to the New York State Master Plan on Aging, which was released this summer. And I think our panelists here will have some really interesting insights about that plan, as well as how, disability can and should fit within New York State aging law and policy. And so we're gonna ask them too, about their priorities for New Yorkers living at those intersections. So I'll pass it off first to Kimberly Hill Ridley to, introduce yourself if there's anything you'd like to add beyond what's been shared already, about yourself, the role of the office, and what you're responsible for.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much for having us here today. Before I get into my role, Kim, I'm going to ask you to come down. It's just dreading this part, I know. I want you, I know when you have heels on too. So you want to, okay, go ahead. You introduce yourself and.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
No, it's not.
Hello. Hi, I'm Kim Buchan. I serve as the Senior Executive Assistant at the Chief Disability Office. My work centers on creating connections between organizing one-on-one meetings to organizing symposiums, which we just talked about, with over 400 attendees. It's all about creating meaningful connections. I am driven by the belief that true progress is born from collaboration. When the CDO office was founded, we established a clear, non-negotiable principle: nothing about us without us. This promise means we are dedicated to building a space where everyone has a voice, from commissioners to community advocates, not only heard, but actively sought out and valued. I have the honor to assist with building bridges, not walls.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
So for those of you who don't know Kim, she is the face of our office. She's who you see literally when you walk in. She's who communicates through all of us for setting up any meetings, and she plans all of our events. Those are many of the roles that the Chief Disability Office has. We also have several legal in statute responsibilities, which I will talk about. And for those of you here today, those probably interest you more than many other groups that we talk to. Statutorily, we are required to chair the Most Integrated Setting Coordinating Council, which was established in 2002 to create an Olmstead plan for New York State, which requires that people live and be served in the most integrated setting appropriate to their needs. You'll hear much more about that later from one of our colleagues down on the other end of the table here. So that is one of our primary roles. I serve as Chief Disability Officer, as the statewide ADA coordinator. So we collaborate with all the state agencies and make sure that they do have an ADA coordinator, that they are trained, and we communicate with them, well, at least monthly, and we train them and ensure that accessibility is a priority across New York State. We also act as an advisor to the governor, to all of the portfolios that work for the governor and all the state agencies on any disability issues. So in those realms is where most of our work lies. We also decided to launch a few events that our team would be responsible for, both of which we created in the first year. Like Pat had mentioned, the governor creating this office was the biggest deal for us. Without this office, New Yorkers who have physical disabilities and sensory disabilities have no representation at the executive level. And like Pat had mentioned, I think it was 2005 or 2006 that the old Office of the Advocate was dissolved. So it's been a very, very long time that people, particularly with physical and sensory disabilities, had anywhere to go. And it is so critical for our office to make sure that the entire New York disability community knows that there's an open door, that we will listen and you will be heard. I can't tell you how proud I am of the team that we have built over the course of the last 3.5 years. Each and every one of them are here tonight, which to get us all in one place at one time is an impressive feat. And I think they're going to each add a little bit to what they do. So I'll turn it over to you, Holly.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you everyone for having us here tonight. We're excited to be here. I am Holly Saupp. I am a licensed master social worker by trade and education. So I bring the social work perspective to the office. In addition to all the things that Kim said and everything that we'll all be talking about, as an associate director, myself and one of my colleagues down there are the generalists for the office. So we kind of spearhead a lot of the major pieces of what we're working on. Areas of focus for myself include health equity, durable medical equipment, prosthetics, orthotics, supplies, anything related to home care, and anything else that may come our way. Voting, accessible voting and things like that have taken a little bit of a side burner, but we'll pick those back up momentarily. But really anything from the social work and social model perspective is what comes into my wheelhouse.
Hi, everybody. My name is Andy Sink. I'm the Employment First Director in the Chief Disability Office. I've been involved in employment and disability work for about 25 years. Employment First is a principle. It's a civil rights and a workforce rights movement that places employment as a primary outcome for people with disabilities, especially those who are interfacing with our public health system for people with disabilities. So Governor Hochul signed the Employment First Executive Order 40 about almost exactly a year ago. Yeah, and so when the CDO was established, I gave Kim about a month, and then I reached out and I said, we've got to talk about employment first. And that was, that was a few years ago. So I don't regret it at this point, boss. No, not at all. It's incredibly exciting that we have infrastructure to take those principles and really put it into practice for our system. And there are many different components to that, but I'm sure we'll get to some of it. And to Patrick's point, we were talking about DREAM. This is National Disability Employment Awareness Month, and this is the 80th anniversary. Mm-hmm. So happy Disability Employment Awareness Month.
Hi, everybody. I'm MaryBeth Schneider. I'm the Inclusive Internship Coordinator. I have the privilege of sitting on this team and a team at the Department of Labor. My primary focus is to connect people with disabilities to internship opportunities in state government. I do that. I work with people with all kinds of different backgrounds, from students maybe just graduating from a BOCES program to people who acquire disability later in life and can't return to their previous career. I'm working across the state with various state agencies and having a ball. Been kind of working my way through all the agencies. In addition, I work on one of the other executive orders, Executive Order 31, called State as a Model Employer. And State as a Model Employer seeks to promote New York State employment as you know, to have the practices and in place in New York State employment that we want to see in private industry too. So including people with disabilities in our workforce, examining our recruiting processes and our onboarding processes, and just, welcoming people with disabilities into the state workforce. I have been doing this kind of work for over 35 years. I'm really pleased to be on the team here now. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Jennifer Perkins. My background includes more than 25 years of Medicaid and disability policy at both the state, local, and federal levels, including serving as a senior fellow for CMS and CMMI, where I helped design innovative models for population health. I was also a state director and executive leadership in a state overseeing population health, and an auditor in another state looking at claims, value-based payments, and designing waivers. I serve as the strategic advisor for the OCDO, where my role is to bring the national Medicaid expertise and provide vision and strategic design for the Olmstead Plan and oversee the implementation and the alignment. And just to frame some of the conversation today, for me, the intersection of aging and disability really can be centered on independence. Individuals experiencing the aging process are looking to maintain and retain the independence that they've had, and individuals that are experiencing disabilities are looking to gain independence that they haven't always experienced in their life, and they're looking to obtain that. So sometimes that's a really critical point that maybe we could base some of the conversation on today. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Ben Thapa. I am a proud alum of Albany Law. And actually, Rachel and I took 4 classes with Professor Hutter over there. Glad to see you here. I'm a deaf Nepali American who came on board in 2022, sort of knowing a little bit about housing, some about technology and accessibility, and then the job sort of demanded that I learn much, much more. And Kim has been both encouraging and also like, let's do some more of that at all times. It has been an absolute journey. So what I do ranges from housing, technology, transportation, education, some accessibility, and most importantly, coordinating between state agencies that may have pieces of somebody's life under their care. And as we know, we're not easily divided up into pieces or little bits that one program or one person can serve. And so when you talk about disability, you really have to talk about all of life, aging and enjoyment and choice and all that. So that has been a daily part of my work. Over to Chris and Rachel.
Just making sure my interpreter can see me. This is Chris Woodfill here. I serve as the executive director of the New York State Deaf, DeafBlind, and Hard of Hearing office. Our office has a section of law that established a council that originally came before the establishment of the office. Section Executive Law 559 established the Interagency Coordinating Council for services to persons who are deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing. That was established back in 2009, and the council ran until 2013, where it then was dissolved. And I will not go into the details of all of that, but it stopped meeting at that point. And when Kim and her office was established about 4 years ago, the deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing community reached out to Kim on a regular basis, I've heard, and asked her, where is our representation? Where is our voice for people with sensory disabilities here in New York State? Kim got busy connecting people here in the state to reestablish the Interagency Coordinating Council, or the IAC is what we call it. She hired me to oversee the council. So we do have our council, but our office was, we named our office to oversee the work of the council. our office is not the council, but we are just a bit removed from it and do the work that they will want us to do. We have several responsibilities for the council to coordinate within state government, making sure at a policy level that we can affect system change to make sure that our state services and benefits are accessible to the deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing members of our state. So that is the work that our office focuses in on. Just taking a look at my notes here. So our office has recognized 3 overarching priorities: access to language, access to communication, and access to information. Access to language is different than communication. The deaf community uses American Sign Language as their language. The deafblind uses tactile American Sign Language or pro-tactile sign language. And the hard of hearing community mostly focuses on the English language, reading and writing and speaking the English language. So that is their language. Most of the hard of hearing community doesn't, in fact, know and are fluent in sign language. Speaking to access of communication, we have interpreters for the deaf community. We have maybe tactile interpreters for the deafblind. We also use refreshable braille or specific types of devices to access communication. So a variety of ways for the deafblind community. And then for the hard of hearing community, they access information through lifetime captioning services or assisted listening devices, ALDs. Access to information. Without language, without communication, we wouldn't have access to information. So the deafblind, and hard of hearing community would be completely left in the dark without access to their information that pertains to them without their language and communication. So those are our meta priorities of our office. And lastly, I will put a shameless plug in as well for our dream event that's happening at the end of the month in October. Since we're here, we will for the first time ever have a deafblind, hard of hearing track at this year's symposium. And we're very excited to have this because we have not in years past, and now we're looking forward to this opportunity to get our deafblind, hard of hearing community members to come and enjoy the symposium specifically for them and employment. So I know everybody else introduced themselves and a little bit of their background. I also am a certified rehab leader, a CRL. I have that credential. In my prior life, I have been involved in advocacy in a variety of capacities, adult rehabilitation. I also was a former educator. That's a bit about my former life here. Before taking this position, I will ask Rachel to introduce herself as well. Hello, everyone. I'm the staff interpreter, Rachel Cahill. I often just emphasize the fact that interpreters don't usually speak for themselves. They're here to simply facilitate communication, but I have an amazing role in this office to not only be the staff interpreter, but to also work on system change for the deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing community members in New York State, really supporting the work that Chris envisions for our office and keeping up with him because he keeps us quite busy. He says yes to a lot of things, and I'm thrilled to be a part of this team and to travel the state and outside of the state as well with him. In my prior world, before coming to the Chief Disability Office, I worked in a variety of areas, starting in education and higher education. I worked in government and interpreting a lot of lobbying for individuals who came to lobby their various rights and disability services. Sometimes it was for deaf children in education. Sometimes it was for various issues pertaining to disability rights and disability laws that people wanted to see new legislation.
I also worked with the deaf-blind community and was trained to work with that population. I also worked starting here as I started in law school when Professor Hutter's class, I interpreted for Ben, but I also got trained as a legal interpreter working in the unified court system in New York State. So I have a variety of backgrounds myself coming into this work and thrilled to be a part of this team.
Well, thank you all very much for sharing what you do. It's amazing work. It really is. One of the things that Ben said really struck with me, that the idea that the state systems that we have now look at people's various pieces, that it's not one individual, but pieces of an individual that each system works with. And I think one of the themes tonight is to talk about putting those pieces back together. And so we thought we'd start with the master plan on aging that was referenced earlier, because in that, the master plan notes that it's important that we improve the aging experience of all New Yorkers, because right now there are lines of geography, race, ethnicity, sexual orientation, gender identity, disability status, caregiver status, carceral status, and other intersecting areas of diversity. Those are a lot of pieces to put together. And so we thought we'd invite our panelists to reflect on their perspectives on that master plan on aging. So I'm going to start with Kim, Holly, and Ben, and what you see as the role of the Chief Disability Officer in that goal.
Actually, Ben is going to take the first part of that question. So Ben, you want to go ahead?
This is Ben. So the master plan on aging was many agencies, many stakeholder group effort to raise in various committees that we were some part of, issues that were important to people Asian in New York. And to make this a little bit meta, we are always Asian. We need to cover everybody from just about birth to our elders, and we need to firmly affix into this consideration that disability, whether permanent or temporary, is a part of it. And so what we were able to do is be part of some of the committees, to bring important stakeholders to these committees to provide feedback. I can remember in particular one meeting with the director of the Office of the Aging with Chris and Rachel and some DeafBlind stakeholders who wanted to talk about the accessibility of nursing homes. And the work that we do in the Chief Disability Office, like, often exists in parallel to the goals of the master plan on aging. We want inclusion. We want there to be choice in how we live and how we work and how we age, whether we can stay in our homes, whether our jobs will adapt to match us as we change, either in experience or in our bodies. And so what we have been focusing on is the Olmsted Plan, which has as a central tenet the inclusion of people with disabilities in our communities to the extent that best fits them. And that does include people who are considering Asian to be one of their primary focuses in either work or in their day-to-day realities. Jennifer, Holly, myself, and the rest of his team have really made this a central focus of our work this year, in part because the governor promised that we would have an Olmsted Plan. And it has been a long time coming, and I'm actually quite excited for what will come from this process.
Thanks, Ben. So first off, we have to give hats off to both the Department of Health and the State Office for the Aging. I'm not sure how clear the 300+ page document that the Master Plan on Aging ended up being is to everybody who takes a look at it, but it was a tremendous undertaking of almost 2 years, 80+ committees, work groups, and all different sorts of entities, such as, I don't know, a lot of different work groups that they had. A lot. Our calendars were full for a good at least 18 months. And CDO was very, very lucky to have a seat at the table and to work. I think we represented almost all of them at some point. And we had a lot of very lengthy conversations with both our health colleagues and our aging colleagues, all who had the belief that people begin aging the moment they're born, and they sustain a limitation or a disability at different points in their life. So we had a lot of communication about that and how disability needed to be reflected in the master plan, and in many places it is. But as Ben mentioned, the luxury that, I'd say luxury, Jen, you probably aren't going to agree with that phrase. But the luxury that our office has is that we are responsible for the Olmsted Plan. And the Olmsted Plan is from the moment someone is born until the moment they pass away. And so it is our goal to kind of carry the torch from what the master plan did and make sure that we cover every aspect of a person's life from birth to death in wanting to live in inclusive, integrated lives. Holly?
Thanks, Kim. So the way that I like to look at this, so I actually mentioned this to Professor Bailey right at the beginning, right before we started. My former life prior to coming to this office was with an independent living center based in Utica. And in 2023 was when the Master Plan on Aging work kind of started, about a 2-year process, as Kim said. And so we as an independent living center wanted to see what our own version of that might look like. So we scheduled an ADA celebration in July of 2023, where Kim and Ben were honored guests and members of our panel. And the focus of that event at that time was the intersectionality of aging and disability. So before I even had a role in this office, that was an area of interest for myself and for our independent living center. So we had a joint panel of Kim and Ben, as I said, and then 2 members of our boards at the independent living center who were older adults themselves talking about their own experiences. So with someone who has an aging mom, so she's 81 now, and seeing as she's gone on in years that, as with all of us, that disability emerges as we age. So looking at just a couple of quick stats, the numbers are between 1 in 5 and 1 in 4 people have a disability or identify as having a disability throughout the lifespan on average. As you hit 65 and over, that goes up toward 50%. So looking at that trajectory, knowing that the paths of aging and disability, they do intersect, but they are looked at differently, have been looked at differently. So looking at the intersectionality is such a key to the work that we do at the state. And just looking at things like, as we get older, we acquire disabilities. If we are someone who's born with a disability, we're living longer now. So just in general, looking at both sides of that same coin, the intersectionality is here. It's here for all of us, whether it's, 25 years ago, 25 years from now, wherever it is, it's happening to all of us. And another thing that I've seen and noticed and appreciated is that the medical model of aging has shifted to a social model, and the same is happening with the disability community. That more of a social model is being looked at and focused on and studied and researched, that it's not just the medical perspective, which is so important. But as we know, a holistic approach, not just one piece or 2 pieces of the person, but the whole person. And the social model allows for that. So having that happening in an organic way, with the aging community and the disability community is something that our office is happy to see and work on as well. And I think, just checking the notes. All right, I think I've got them all. Thank you.
Thanks.
If I might interrupt just very briefly.
Yes.
A couple of our students are collecting your question cards. So if you have questions for our guests, please pass them along. Thank you.
Chris, we're going to turn to you to talk a little bit about the role that you see for the deaf, blind, and hard of hearing office with respect to the goal that the master plan on aging has set, and particularly commenting on sensory disabilities that are discussed in the master plan on aging.
Sure, I'd be glad to. So for the deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing communities, the biggest issue and the top challenge we have is access to language, communication, and information, as I discussed previously. Those are really the top challenges. As a result of those challenges, many members of the deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing communities prefer to live together and to be congregated together. If there is a deaf-friendly space, or maybe an assisted living center, retirement community, a long-term care center, or memory care center, as individuals age in different places where they age in the community, the deaf community and the ASL community, the deaf-blind, if they're a part of that, or even hard of hearing, want to be together. And the reason why is because they want to be able to access services directly in their language of choice, which is usually American Sign Language. They don't want to have to navigate into another space and have to use interpreters. They would rather gain resources in one space in their language. So we have received many requests from individuals and stakeholders all of our state to establish assisted living centers, or even a wing in a hall or a specific building in a unit where there is ASL friendly space, and they have peer-to-peer type of care, which means that maybe if it's at-home care, they are receiving at-home services from another person who is also a member of the deaf, deafblind, hard of hearing community. So that peer-to-peer work is vital to long-term care and any type of resources that they receive. We were able to successfully get a section of the MPA to incorporate the deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing community this year successfully.
Thanks, Chris. Jennifer, we're going to turn to you to talk some more about the Olmsted mandate that I think Kim and a few others mentioned earlier. Could you talk a little bit about what the Olmsted mandate is, and then how that factors into the goal that the master plan has set?
Sure. So yeah, the way I look at it, the master plan on aging provides the vision, and Olmsted mandate provides the background and the backbone for independence and choice and dignity. So I think the master plan on aging is powerful, but it only works if people trust the systems that they rely on. So too often, systems emphasize oversight and risk reduction in ways that erode trust and privacy. Constant check-ins, monitoring, surveillance, those are meant to keep people safe, but it ends up leaving people without ever experiencing privacy or trust. And we see that in people that have been in either institutionalized settings or have been supported throughout their life with community-based supports. People who don't think they can shut the door in their own home. They don't answer their own door in their group home. People that go in to take a shower and don't even think to shut the door because privacy is no longer even something that they can have or they've ever experienced. So Olmsted mandate really talks about least restrictive environment and most integrated setting. And that doesn't just mean an institutional setting to being in the community. There is no purpose in being in the community if you are not part of that community, and if you aren't surrounded by people that you know and love and that know and love you, and you're not able to have relationships or make decisions for yourself. And so Olmsted really provides that on the ground. How do we make sure that funding is there and that we aren't just defaulting to institutionalized settings because of funding? And we have to balance the difference between a system-centered, process and program and a person-centered process or program. And we have to keep the person at the center of it. And I think that's really what Olmsted does. It looks at the challenges around funding. It looks at the challenges around federal authority pathways and what are the state regulations. And we walk this fine line of making sure we're keeping people safe, but that they're also living really meaningful lives and that they have some dignity of risk involved in that.
Thanks. So Andy and MaryBeth, you talked about employment first and offering opportunities for internships for individuals either returning to the workforce or starting out. How do those programs that you're working on reflect the goal of the master plan on aging, or how do you see them intersecting with the master plan?
I'll start with a little bit more of the general employment perspective, and MaryBeth, you want to talk about internships. I think that generally the principles of employment first are not exclusive to people with disabilities. And also, I think that, so what I'm going to talk about is the way that we're supporting people who have disabilities and people who are aging. What are their goals and how are we mitigating the barriers to those goals? Holly brought up the social model. I spent a lot of time in the working at the Office of Mental Health. So in the principles of recovery, the principles of rehabilitation are, you know, as opposed to a medical model, which would focus on what is the symptom. The principles of recovery and rehabilitation would be, what are your goals and how do we mitigate the barriers to those goals? There's an evidence-based practice that we are using the principles of as guiding principles for employment first. That's individual placement and support. And a couple of those principles are zero exclusion and rapid engagement. And that's for the folks that are supporting people. So if somebody has a goal, our system or whoever is supporting them needs to be able to be nimble enough to adapt and support them. And so in terms of employment, medical model would often say, well, we'll talk about employment once we fix these other things, as opposed to, yeah, you know what, employment is a great idea for, you know, be it financially, be it meaningful use of time, and as opposed to saying, okay, well, we're not going to do that yet. So those principles assisting people to, you know, real person-centered, citizen-centered choices, and the way that system needs to be equipped with the tools and the language and the ability to be able to support people immediately, as opposed to saying, not yet, because that not yet may be pushed further and further down the road. Yeah.
What Andy said. And I guess I'll just kind of push this through the lens of inclusive internships specifically. That ability to explore a different opportunity, you know, maybe take on something that you want to try to apply your skills to or learn a new skill, build your resume, just engage, you know, with new people in a different environment is extremely important for people with disabilities. And as, again, you know, as people age, you know, as I mentioned earlier, I do work with some people who acquired disability later in life and they had to change careers. That's a pretty scary thing. And internships can help people in a safer way to kind of explore different opportunities. But I'll just kind of reiterate what Andy said in terms of the being not ready and, you know, waiting till somebody's ready, waiting till somebody has all the skills and, you know, can cross all the T's and dot all the I's. That's not realistic for any of us. What we need is creativity in terms of, you know, finding the right opportunities and looking for spaces where people can apply their skills.
Can I just jump in and add a little bit of peanut gallery over here? One thing that I think that we have to give kudos to Governor Hochul on, which our first full budget cycle when we came on board, she was adamant about expanding the Medicaid buy-in program for working people with disabilities. For those of you who are not aware, it's a program that allows people with disabilities to work and maintain their Medicaid, which is crucial for people who in particular rely on things like home care because Medicaid is the only thing that pays for that. in the doing of this very huge expansion, which at this point is at the federal government waiting for CMS approval. One of the components that she included in that was eliminating the age cap of 65. So she very much acknowledged that people want to work well into their 60s and beyond, and was adamant about making that happen. Do you want to?
Yeah, I can't help it now that you brought that up. No, it's okay. We could talk about these things all night, right? But I think that's a perfect point. One of the greatest barriers for people with disabilities to go to work is working while receiving public benefits. How do I end up with more money in my pocket? How do I end up with being able to have a house, a car? Get married. Thank you. And that's an incredibly difficult thing in general for people on receiving public benefits. And SSA benefits like SSI, SSDI, Medicaid, Medicare, and for our system as a whole, that's a significant barrier. So we focus a lot about that in Employment First. There's a lot of resources associated with that, which plenty of information on if you want. I won't go on about it right now. But for the aging population, the technical ability to provide good benefits advisement that includes financial literacy is different. And that is we don't have a lot of technical capacity to be able to do that. So making sure that that is available. And again, with the rapid engagement and zero exclusion, it's very easy for people to say, well, your rent's going to change, your contributions are going to change, your retirement's going to change. And that could have an immediate negative impact on whether somebody decides to engage in work or in another meaningful activity. Social determinants of health, that has to do with unemployment and poverty have negative impacts on person's health outcomes, right? And if we say your financial health is threatened if you want to go to work because we don't understand how it's going to be impacted, that could discourage somebody from going to work when the opposite may be true. So it's certainly something that we need to get better at.
So thanks to the last comments, because as I was thinking about where we want to go next, some of the things you said about the choices that people are being forced to make by the systems as they exist sort of leads us to the next part, which is, what would you like to see prioritized for people living at the intersection of disability and aging? And so I'm going to, before you answer, say, this is a three-part question. What makes it a priority? What are the challenges? And I can guess the challenges are going to come fast and furiously. And what would it take to make that happen? So whoever would like to start that answer, maybe Kim?
Yeah, so I'll start. We discussed this before coming here, so we each have a little bit of a role here. Every part of what my team is going to say, I added 2 words to it. And I'm going to echo what Kim said at the beginning. Everything is about nothing about us without us. And everything that drives our team can be encompassed in 4 words: integration, inclusiveness, accessibility, and first and foremost, choice. So I'm going to let the team go on about what makes it a priority. We might be here till tomorrow if we talk about all the challenges. But yeah, Holly, I'll turn it over to you.
So where I land with looking at this one, so thanks for the heads up on the questions, is the focus on health equity. So knowing, that there's so much both with older adults and people with disabilities not having equal access or equity to things related to health, traditional health, social determinants of health, pick one. So it's hard. A lot of it, in terms of challenges, a lot of it is really just education and people being willing to look at things differently and actually take the time to talk to the members of the communities, right? So people with disabilities, older adults, people who are both, and really engage around what experiences look like. What are the things that we can do as an office to help facilitate that? We, open doors always. We hear a lot from stakeholders from the disability community who of any age that they're having challenges or facing challenges within the health system, the public health system. So talking with our colleagues, working with the state agencies, making sure that we're doing everything we can to keep the lines of communication open and that the voices of our stakeholders are being heard.
We're just going down the line here. Great. Oh man, where to start with this one, right? So I think that as a priority, one of the things that we talk about a lot is the lack of cohesion between children, youth, young adults when they transition from the school system to the adult system. And without going into all the details, it's full of pitfalls. There is not a lot of cohesion. There's not a lot of connective tissue between those things. And that's something that we are working on. We are prioritizing. I think the same is true as the folks who are engaging with our system age, how we are supporting, prioritizing, and finding the strengths within there to make sure that there is cohesion and focus on what are the opportunities there. Where had we more time, I would go into the diversity that brings to the into the workplace and the talent pools and what that means from the private sector perspective, because we're very often looking at the public health lens. But I think that there's a term that's used, it's called K to gray, right? And that's like beginning to end. How do we make that seamless? How do we make sure that we're supporting people throughout?
Now, I would just add that I feel like from a very young age, we're all taught to think about what do we want to do? You know, what do you want to be when you grow up? And to be able to start having these conversations with children with disabilities at a much younger age. We know that, you know, most of us define ourselves at least partially by our career, by what we do for a living. You know, we get our social networks from our job, you know, our friends. And I have to tell you, we're sitting all here together later on tonight. We'll all be texting each other. You know, it's just such a tight group of people. And that's what I want for people with disabilities. Many people that I've worked with over the years have lived in some very lonely existence. And I think that also happens to people as they age too, as they lose connections with peers and family. Disability can be a lonely experience. Employment, or even if you want to just, you know, level up to just engagement, social engagement, is crucial to somebody's health and well-being.
This was a really hard one for me to narrow down as well. But I think if I were to encapsulate it all, it would be that you absolutely cannot do public service without the public. And I would love to see that be more of a priority. We have a lot of staff turnover at all of the state Medicaid agencies. I've worked with 19 states. The skill sets that are there is just not the same as it used to be, where people were using it as a lifetime career. People are going to state Medicaid agencies or state agencies and getting some experience and then leaving. So we really need to require that people have more listening sessions, that they listen to the people that are actually using and depend on these services. We cannot move from a compliance-driven process or a process-driven state where we're just checking the box. You'll ask people, why do you have to go through 5 steps? It could be simple if you just did 2. Well, because this is the process, but there's no purpose behind that process. And unless you understand what people are going through and the experience on the other side, you can't then navigate the system and create processes and policies and regulations and lead teams that are purpose-driven if you don't understand what actually is the purpose behind all of it. And so I think that's what I would really love for us to prioritize more all the way around in the system, both public and private sector, is you cannot do public service without the public involved.
So I think we as a nation have not been truly honest about the cost of care, whether it's elder care, child care, home care, like all the kinds of things. And we've not been truly honest about where does personal responsibility begin and end? Where does state coordination and systems begin and end? And with COVID, with the silver tsunami, we have major waves of new people with disabilities and life changes, and a lot of decisions to be made about where we live, how we live, what's walkable, what does education look like, what does childcare look like, and so on and so on. We all have that the underlying thing of how to do it for as little money as possible. It's a very, very tall task, and one that is going to require a huge amount of coordination between all of the O agencies, between the governor's ambitious plans, like the mental health billion, the bringing down housing costs, congestion pricing, all of these things interrelate into, can we afford to live the life that we want? How does the state play a role in that? And hopefully the Olmsted Plan gives a lot of answers to the people of New York. But we cannot do it alone. As Jen mentioned, others have mentioned, we need the public involved. We need lived experience. We need people who face these problems to tell us what these problems are and hopefully give us some solutions to work on them.
Okay, this is Chris Woodfill here again. Thinking about this question about priorities for the deaf aging community, we have received repeated requests, and I think it's maybe important for you to know some of the history here. Back in the 1950s and 60s, we had a large population of deaf babies that were born due to the rubella and measles outbreak that was happening at that time. As a result of all of that, at the same time, we had the baby boom generation. So not only were a large number of babies being born, but a lot of babies that were born who were deaf as a result of rubella. So that population is now aging. They are the senior community who reach out to us, and they discuss all of their the needs that they have, the challenges they have. And we see that New York State has several task force and work groups and councils all over the place. You'll see in different state agencies, all focusing on the deaf aging population and the care that they're receiving. So this is a major issue in our community, and we need to make sure we attend to this. So it has been a priority for our office. And I'm thinking about the barriers for our community. Our community often is not seen. Maybe they're considered a low incidence population. And trust me, we're not a low incidence population in New York State. But anyways, often people overlook this population, this community. We have about almost 600,000 people who have checked the box during a census that they are deaf or have severe hearing loss. That was from the American Community Survey, 600,000 individuals, not in insignificant community. I think the barriers for them often is that they are not a known community. Many people are just ignorant about our community. We have to make sure that they're known. We have to educate the state agencies. This population is here and these are their needs. And we have to make sure that we incorporate them into the state services and the plans that are coming out to improve access to services that they're receiving here in our state, especially as they're aging. And I'm thinking about this population we have, the rubella generation, and they're only going to get older in the future years. And this is Rachel. I'll just add a couple more thoughts. One of the major social determinants of health that hasn't yet been mentioned is language and the need for language access. Language does affect our health or lack of language. I also think of the aging population are often isolated and the need to have social interaction. So we have discussed different types of potential initiatives and what we can do to make sure that our population that we work with, the deaf, blind, hard of hearing, are not socially isolated, because they can be a naturally isolated community, but as they age and they're no longer working and they're no longer out in the community, it can be a worsening effect in social isolation. So we want to make sure that we are considering all of those challenges in the work that we're doing. Hope that answered that question.
That's good. Actually, I was struck by the fact that in an aging or elder law class, we talk about isolation as something that renders people very vulnerable. And it seems like a common thread that can tie everyone together. It's interesting. Which brings us back to sort of where we started with the point that people who have disabilities or people who are growing older seem to have distinct rights and benefits and supports depending on the system. And so we would like to talk about, is there a different way to think about these populations to bring them together? I know that's been a thread of integration. Is there anything else you'd like to add about thinking about it differently?
And if I may, this is
Sure.
Phil.
Yes.
To add to this, because so we live in a system where, right, older adults and people with disabilities have distinct rights and resources, access to supports. And in this system, the act of categorizing us as someone with a disability or as an older adult or any of these other kinds of intersecting experiences we've talked about before, which we know are not mutually exclusive, that categorization is necessary to determine how to allocate resources. So we're hoping you might have another way to think about this.
Sure, that is a big question. I think two of the ways, and I've been advocating for this prior to coming to the governor's office. I worked for the legislature for 28 years, and I've spent most of my career working with advocates and state agencies. And through most of my career, what I have found is that advocates tend to stay in their own lane for what they, the issue that they're working on, and agencies stay in their own lane. And we are never going to make dramatic change if we don't all start working together. We are constantly encouraging all the different advocacy groups that we work with to work together to find common goals. And we spend a lot of time working with our agencies because disability does spread across many agencies, even ones that you might not even necessarily think about, in getting them to communicate with us and with each other so that they have a more broad understanding of the whole picture. So I think continuing in that vein is going to help. We already see where we're making inroads and getting agencies to talk to each other and getting advocacy groups to back each other up, how that's helping. But we still have a long way to go.
Yes. One of the things we like to talk about, and within the services system, because of these challenges, one of the things we're doing is we're creating a huge profession of people who are excellent Medicaid billers, right? And like, oh, I work in this program, I work in this program, and but if you cooked down, they're incredibly proficient at it's very technical skill that has to do with identifying what is the particular barrier, who is the first payer, what are the functional limitations, and so we have an incredibly well-funded and robust support services infrastructure for people with disabilities in New York. If you look at other states, that's true. It is incredibly complicated, and it's incredibly complicated to move from one to the other. I think that there is a lot of coordination that goes on between the state agencies and attempting to figure out how to do more flexible work with things like Medicaid. And I know that there are many attempts now at figuring out how to have providers who are operating under one license be able to serve people with co-occurring disorders, as an example. But the lack of flexibility there is telling in the way that our silos, our lanes stay separate. And of course, that's not human. That's, it's math. So I think that, I'm just stating the problem, but I think that identifies the potential solution is, and I would love to see CMS, I know that this is a shifting sands period, but figure out how to provide more technical assistance on the flexible applications of Medicaid, which we know exist, but it's so hard to do the basic stuff. Doing the advanced stuff is even more so.
Does anyone else have something to add? I will just add, kind of based on Kim's comments, that when we pay attention to things like accessibility, that not only helps people with disabilities, it helps all of us have better life. At this point in our life, or when we're older, accessibility is good for everyone. So I would just like to add that, I know we're talking about kind of staying in your lane, but really, there's so many benefits for everyone in our community.
Can you refresh me on the original question?
We'll get the commentary on our.
He asked me, but I was no help.
Right.
Yeah, I'll try.
Yeah.
We live in a system where older individuals and people with disabilities are kind of siloed to different systems where they have distinct rights, benefits, and support. And that active categorization is, a way to allocate resources in this system. I'm not saying it's the best way, but is there a different way to think about that?
I want to start by saying that we have had several generations of my family live with me. I can remember being 4 years old and having a granduncle come stay with us because he needed access to healthcare for kidney surgery. About 5 years ago, my grandmother came to live with my parents. She had Alzheimer's and she had sort of progressed past the point where the assisted living facility could handle her safely. We do talk about official systems within the government that, our elders have access to past a certain age, but underneath that all is family and loved one providing care unofficially, often without pay, long hours, while handling regular lives too. And I think that what we currently have is sort of a piecemeal system trying to take that burden off and trying to support it, but maybe being hampered or pushed away from being a full inclusive system that does take a lot of pressure off people. And there's going to be probably decades and decades before it becomes a more comprehensive, stable system that does provide care. But
Yeah. Okay.
hopefully this is not too grim of a comment, but we've got a lot of work to do and we can do it. I am somewhat hopeful about that. I may not see the actual end of it, but
So I want to say that.
I have seen how hard it was for my parents. And I would like that to not be the experience for people going forward, especially for care for our elders and for ourselves.
I'll just offer a little bit of perspective. I see this a little bit differently. Several years ago, there was a big push for everyone to be individualized, to be seen as individuals, and different people with different disabilities they didn't all want to be a one-size-fits-all system. And I see a lot of this as an overcorrection of that, where now everything has broken off. And so the supports are highly individualized to a very laser-focused set of criteria, sets of needs, eligibility assessments. And so I think that's a little bit of an overcorrection because we all want to be seen as individuals and we have individual programs and individual rights and everyone wants to be seen as I'm not like you, I'm kind of on my own over here and I want to be seen for what's different about me. And I think all of that is great, but I do think that there's a tendency to overcorrect, and hopefully we'll see that some of that is going to come back so that we're balancing both individualization with efficiency. Because what we're seeing now is the way that things are now is just not very efficient.
Mrs. Chell, thank you. Does anyone else have something to add to this? Okay, so we are past time. Those of you who did submit questions, thank you. If that's okay, we're going to share the questions with this team and see if we can get some responses and share them back with you, because we want to respect everyone's time. Okay. So first of all, thank you to all of our really wonderful panelists here today. Can we get a round of applause?